Hello, I'm Nick Mellersh, and I'm here to talk to you about 3 World War I books that were written by my father, and I have just republished as e-books. Here they are. The first of them is his novel that he wrote in 1930s, and we've called it Schoolboy into War, the novel, because he went into war when he was just 18. That is the first book, the story of his life in the trenches and also his experiences outside, mostly back in England on leave or recovering in hospital. The next book is Schoolboy into War, the Autobiography. He wrote this in his 70s because he thought that there was a very distorted view of what the First World War was like and what it was about. That is the same story as an autobiography. The last book is called Poet into War. It's about Siegfried Sassoon, and he had a great affinity with him because he fought in the same area of the trenches by Fricourt that Sassoon fought in and won his medal. So those are the 3. Now the First World War was a turning point in European history. There are reminders of it all over Europe. This is the war memorial in the small village where I live. Horses wander around it now, and 20 young men were killed during the First World War. Here is the plaque on the church naming them. And here is the memorial in Abbots Langley. This is the place where my father wrote the first of the books in around 1930. 80 men were killed in Abbots Langley. And here is the memorial in Heimhausen in Germany, where my daughter now lives. Another crowd of men were killed from this small village near Munich in Germany. There have been many wars since the First World War, but we don't want any more of them. So perhaps the first thing is to understand war and why it is fought and what it feels like to fight in it as a young man. I hope my father's books can help you understand a bit of this. They have certainly helped me. When the war started, my father was on an annual seaside holiday with his family. He was 17, and his first thought was, oh, this is rather exciting. And his second thought probably returned to motorbikes. He was obsessed by motorbikes at this time. Returning back to school, he found that his schoolmates were talking of joining up. And then one day, a wounded officer returned to the school, an old boy he must have been, and he saw the admiration of his schoolboy colleagues and the pity tinged with a bit of jealousy from the masters, and from then on he determined that he would go and fight himself. He waited for the very beginning to tell his parents. His mother was very worried but accepting, and his father was surprised but rather proud. Then there were a few months training, first in the Temple in London and then at Worcester College in Oxford. These had been sequestered for training by the army. Then he joined his regiment, the 2nd East Lancashire Regiment near Plymouth, and waited for the call-up. There was a lot of training, largely to fight the sort of battles that had been fought in South Africa and other places, and had little to do with the battles that were going on in France. And he spent his time walking around Plymouth in his officer's uniform and enjoying the chance of being a bit of a gay young dog. Finally there was the call to France. The next 3 years saw him wounded 3 times and sent home to increasingly harassed hospitals in the UK. During these 3 years, he learnt much from his fellow officers, the men he commanded, and from the bitter experiences of fighting on the Western Front. The day of the armistice, 11th of November 1918, saw him preparing to return to France for the 4th time. He returned on the next day, bewildered by the sudden change in his life and expectations, and the new peace that had suddenly arrived. Finally, he left the army knocked down by the Spanish flu, which killed almost as many men as the fighting, but luckily it didn't kill him. He was a different man by then, and determined to do what he could to ensure that it would not happen again. His belief was in education and an attempt to recapture the camaraderie and purposefulness of war in days of peace. To this end, he wrote many books, mostly educational, but among them were these 3 World War I books that I'm now publishing or republishing as e-books. You can read excerpts from them on the website Ngenius UK, or you can search for Mellersh, spelt M-E-L-L-E-R-S-H, on the net or on your e-book store. Here they are. Where are they now? Schoolboy into War, the novel. Schoolboy into War, the autobiography. And finally, Poet into War, a life of Siegfried Sassoon. I think you'll find these books do much to increase your understanding of war and what it is like to fight in a war as a very young man. Hopefully, as we learn more about war, we can also learn more about how to avoid it in the future. This is my hope, as it was the hope of my father, Harold H E L Mellersh. Thank you for watching this. I hope you enjoy reading the books. Goodbye. Finally, here's a poem I wrote, a bit of a depressing poem about the war. It's called You Can't Blame Us. You can't blame us, said the generals. We did what you told us to do. We thought that you asked us to win the war, and we won it. What more could we do? You can't blame us, said the government. We had to defend the land, and these things always come at a cost. Surely you understand. You can't blame me, said the soldier. I just did what I was told, and anyway I was simply a kid. I died at 20 years old. So was it all simply nobody's fault? This horror, this killing, this pain? It seems like the truth, but if it is true, why, it's certain to happen again.